Real quick, I want to give a shout out to G-Mark. She created a ton of gorgeous art for this chapter. And also, Icebear contributed another awesome drawing. I'll put their drawings up on the screen during the scenes that they're meant to illustrate. Part 29, here we go. You'd been worried that Aizawa wouldn't tell you what Night Eye had seen. But it was worse than that. He did tell you Night Eye's predictions. And he believed them. How could you think I'd ever join the villains? Aizawa stared at you tiredly. The circumstances of the future may be more complicated than you realize, Eiko. I don't know what could drive you to switch sides, but Night Eye's visions have never been wrong. What if he was lying? That's irrational. He's not ready to throw away his perfect record of predicting the future over a single lie. Additionally, clearing your name was in his personal interests. He was very irritated when that turned out to be impossible. Dad, I would never join the villains. Don't you trust me? Your heart ached, and anger was the only emotion that seemed to numb it. Dad had always been your most constant supporter, your hero. Didn't he know you better than this? Aizawa sighed. Regardless of how you currently feel, we need to assume that there is a possibility of the villains finding a way to change your mind. I'm telling you this so that you understand the precautions we're taking. We need to limit how much information you have on UA plans and hero operations. He fixed you with a stern glare. You need to accept that you can't come with me to meetings anymore, nor will I answer your endless questions. Not until this gets sorted out. It hurt. You protested. You argued until you ran out of breath, until your throat felt like it was closing up, until your eyes stung from the tears that you were holding in. But Aizawa remained firm. You finally left the house to cool your head, jogging through alleyways in the late afternoon sun. You almost stepped on a snail, but managed to dodge just in time. You stopped, panting, and lifted it carefully by its shell, setting it down in the shade where people wouldn't step on it. After a minute, the snail poked back out of its shell to explore the shady leaves that it had been placed in. If you couldn't even hurt a snail, how could anyone possibly think you would become a villain who hurt people? Was it possible? You didn't think so. You knew yourself, right? How much could people change? And how fast? No, you weren't even going to consider it. There was no way you would work with the villains. Your phone started to ring. You pulled it out and answered, half hoping it was Dad, calling to apologize, to tell you he'd realized you would never be a villain. Hello?
Hey, Eiko.
Mina's voice came through the phone.
Are you busy?
Not really.
Are you all right? You sound kind of down.
Do I? Makes sense.
Well, come hang out with me and Jirou. We'll cheer you up.
You half smiled at her lack of hesitation. Mina always treated life like it was so simple. Okay. Where and when?
My place, right now. Come on over, Eiko.
Jirou's voice added faintly. "'Kay, guys," you laughed. "I'll see you in a few." It didn't take long to run to Mina's house. It was a smallish house, just like yours, but with pink terracotta-style walls on the outside, and a much more vibrantly decorated interior than Aizawa the minimalist could ever dream of. Mina's mom immediately let you in and told you that you could find Mina in her room. You walked up the narrow stairs and heard Mina's laugh through the door. Mina was twirling around with a dress in her hands, as though dancing with it, while Jirou sat on the bed, swinging her feet and writing a checklist into her notebook. You took a step inside and almost tripped over a pair of crumpled jeans. Mina had clothes strewn all over the place, on the bed, on the floor, even on the windowsill. "What are you guys doing?" you asked, amused. Mina twirled over to you, tossing the dress aside with a happy grin. "Packing for the training camp next week." "Already?" "Of course! It's going to be the biggest class social of the year!" Her eyes sparkled with excitement. "What are you working on, Jirou?" You squinted at the paper. "Making a list of essentials so none of us forget. You know, sunscreen, phone charger, all that stuff. Sounds useful. Mina dragged you over to some shirts, lifting them on their hangers and demanding to know which one looked cuter. This one really flatters my figure, but... She held up a sweater crop top with a deep red-pink hue. Kiri did mention that he loves red. You and Jirou flashed each other a glance, then turned to stare at Mina. Kiri? You demanded. Since when? She blushed hot pink. Hang on, that's not what I meant. You started to grin. Sounded pretty clear to me, Jirou? Jirou nodded with a deadpan expression. Mina wanting to wear Kiri's favorite color? Yep, I heard that. You felt giddy. Mina was constantly finding embarrassing ways to tease you about boys. Finally, you had the perfect ammo to tease her back, as evidenced by her hot pink blush. And does this mean she doesn't like Shinso? Unexpected relief washed over you. Mina pouted at your broad grin, still fighting her blush. Guys, come on, there's nothing there. Never mind. Come on, Mina, you teased. I wouldn't say there's nothing there. He says you really inspired him in middle school. He said that? You laughed, and Mina swatted you with a shirt. Stop, you laughed. Yeah, he did. Mina pretended not to care, but it was obvious how happy she was. You're getting a real kick out of this, aren't you, Eiko? Of course, I finally get to tease you. You grinned shamelessly. Aw, come on, Eiko. Let's go and tease Jirou for a while. Jirou looked up as Mina pointed at her triumphantly. Denki's finally moved on, and this hottie is the reason. You raised your eyebrows in surprise, looking at Jirou. Really? No, not really, Jirou shrugged. We've just been hanging out more. You grinned mischievously. Okay. That's it? Mina protested. I say there's nothing going on, and you roast me for 5 minutes. And then Jirou says there's nothing going on, and you're just like, okay? Yeah, pretty much. How could you do this to me, Eiko? She began to stuff clothing into her suitcase aggressively. You cracked up. That line, then packing your bags. Are you leaving me, Mina? Yes, she shot back, then started to crack up too. Don't go, Mina. I'll bring you flowers. You never even remember our friendiversary. But she cut you off by slamming her suitcase with a resounding bang, and the three of you cracked up so hard that Mina's mom came in to check on you guys. For an entire minute, you were all laughing too hard to answer her, which only made it even funnier. You know what, guys? You said when everyone had finally calmed down. You wiped tears from the corners of your eyes, looking at your friends with gratitude. I'm excited for this training camp. You finally went home. You'd been away for longer than the daily 2 hours you'd agreed on with Aizawa when your shape-shifting problem started, but you didn't really care right now. Aizawa was sitting at the table, his computer keys clicking rapidly as he typed. Your heart ached, remembering that he didn't trust you. What are you working on? You tried to sound normal in spite of the argument the two of you had earlier. UA business. He continued typing. Fine, you muttered. Don't tell me. Where are you going? He asked without looking up. The typing sounds continued. You glared even though he didn't see it. To get my homework and then come back down here where you can keep an eye on me. He looked up with a scowl, fingers finally stilling. This is for your safety, Eiko. Right, you snapped, running upstairs. You didn't have the energy to argue. You and Dad worked side by side in a terse silence. Your mind wandered. Mina and Jirou knew about your quirk issues now. Hopefully Bakugo wouldn't find out, because if you suddenly turned into a tiny cat in front of him, he'd probably roast you for being weak or something. But, oh well. You were looking forward to the training camp more and more, where you could spend time with your friends all day and every night, instead of sitting under Aizawa's supervision, while he refused to tell you anything important. He wouldn't tell you where the training camp was going to be. He wouldn't tell you what they were going to do about the villains. Maybe he'd never trusted you. He hadn't even told you when he was planning to appear on the news for a press conference. How much had Aizawa ever felt comfortable sharing with you? Not much. You glared at your hands. Well, all you had to do was prove it. When that moment in Night Eye's vision came around, you'd look right into that villain's eyes and tell him, "No way." And then everyone would trust you again. The thought cheered you up, and you resumed your work with a bit more enthusiasm. The next day, at school, you were just walking down the hallway to class when All Might approached you. "Young Aizawa," he asked, "do you have a minute?" "Sure." He indicated an empty classroom, arm muscles flexing as he opened the door for you. You couldn't help feeling a bit of unease as you walked in. Meeting a teacher in an empty room instead of the principal's office seemed kind of sketch. But even if he sucked at teaching, All Might was the #1 hero, and he'd always been nice. He pulled up a chair for each of you. You sat across from him. You couldn't read that fixed grin he always wore. "So, young Aizawa, I know that you're in a predicament right now." You shrugged uncomfortably. What did he want? Was he going to comfort you? He looked at you, eyes hard above that grin. "How long have you been in contact with All for One?" The question caught you completely off guard. What? His smile twitched as though it took effort. "I know it's scary. He's likely threatened you. But if you tell me everything, I promise I'll protect you from him." You stood up, knocking your chair backwards. "I am not talking to All for One, and I don't need your protection." Your claws sprang out, unintentionally, but your gauntlets did a great job of immediately coating them in tough gel. All Might's eyes narrowed, and suddenly he had you pinned against the wall. You gasped for air. When had he even moved? Did he have super speed? "I don't like to do this, young Aizawa, but I'll use whatever means necessary to make you talk." All Might's smile didn't look so hard to read anymore. "You're the UA traitor, aren't you?" he accused, eyes flaming blue. "No, I'm not!" You gasped as his huge hand made it even harder to breathe. "Young Aizawa," All Might said with a disappointed sigh, "you're in over your head. Tell the truth." You struggled in his grip, and he tightened it painfully. "Stop!" you screamed. The door crashed open, daylight from the hallway spilling around a dark silhouette with burning red eyes. Aizawa's gaze made All Might wither, literally. The muscle-bound #1 hero shrunk into what looked like a skinny, druggy surfer dude. What in the world? That was what All Might looked like without his quirk? "Eraserhead," the #1 hero seethed. "You just showed top-secret info to All for One's informant." Aizawa turned his head slowly, his red eyes blazing at All Might. "If you wanted to keep that a secret, then you should never have touched my child." You shivered at Aizawa's scarily calm voice, but All Might didn't seem to realize how much trouble he was in. "We need to interrogate her. It's to protect the peace." Suddenly, Aizawa stood in front of All Might, red eyes scorching into his as he grabbed the deflated hero's wrist. Aizawa looked down with a sadistic smile. "So, this is the hand you touched Eiko with." In a blur of speed, he twisted. All Might bit back a scream of pain as he fell to his knees. Aizawa returned to your side. "Time for us to go. You've made my student late for class." His hand on your back guided you out of the room, away from a furious All Might. You walked, one foot in front of the other, mind numb. What had just happened? You glanced up at Dad as he gazed tiredly into the distance ahead. So now you understood the phrase Mike had let slip about someone on staff who didn't trust you. Just your luck that it was the #1 hero. After a long minute of silence, you asked the question that had been bothering you. "Dad, don't you agree with All Might? Wouldn't it be rational to interrogate me?" Aizawa stopped short, scowling. "I will take precautions against the future, but nothing justifies the measures that idiot was taking. Nezu wasn't rational. It was a mistake to let him on UA staff." You looked at your shoes sulkily. Aizawa's hand on your head made you look up again. "Let me make myself clear. I do trust you, Eiko." "You do?" "I know it doesn't seem like it, Aizawa sighed. But someday you'll understand how complicated situations can become. People can do unexpected things under enough pressure, even become different people. It doesn't mean you have to give up on them. You tilted your head quizzically. You sound like you're talking about someone else now. He smiled wanly. Just try not to be offended by the precautions, problem child. Remember, I believe in you. I'll try. But it was so hard. How were you supposed to know if Aizawa really trusted you when he wouldn't tell you anything? The two of you entered the classroom. Just one more school day. One more day before the training camp. Okay, wait. Don't go anywhere. Because, drumroll, I just finished something that I'm super excited about. I created an animatic for the Irrational series. Well, technically it's an Oboro Shirakumo animatic, but it has Eiko in it. Watch till the end, and during the last 20 seconds, that's gonna pop up on the screen for you to click. It'll also be linked in the description if you don't want to wait until the last 20 seconds. Go check it out. I hope you like it. Hope you enjoyed this chapter. Sorry to all the All Might fans. I really do think All Might's a great guy in canon. But for some reason when writing fanfiction, I have a tendency to villainize him. I don't know why. Bad habit. Anyways, I hope you have a great week. I'll see you next time.